A horror slasher gets cut down to size. Here's your look at the new Mezco Toyz, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre MDS Leatherface. Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding cannibal, joins the Mezco designer series. Leatherface is dressed to kill, outfitted in short-sleeve collared shirt with a tie under his apron, slacks, and cowboy boots. He comes complete with his infamous chainsaw and a hammer, which can be held neatly in his hands. More on MDS Leatherface in a moment. First, though, let's figure out how tall the figure stands. I actually found this over on Entertainment Earth's website. I believe it's one of their newest releases. I'll provide the link down below in the video description if you guys are interested to pick up Leatherface for yourself. The figure stands at about 6 inches in height, and that works out to be a figure that's just a little over 15 centimeters tall. What you would expect Leatherface to come included with, the figure comes included with, like, for example, a small hammering mallet. I don't know whether this would be considered a hammer or a mallet, judging by how big and broad the head is. I would imagine it'd be closer to being a mallet. We could debate about that a little bit later, though. One thing we certainly can't debate is the fact that he has used it, judging by the amount of blood that's on the end of it. He's hammered in someone's brains, or head at least. This can be actually fit into his hands. He actually has a smaller hand and a slightly bigger grip hand for holding the handle of the chainsaw. Generally, I like to put the hammer on this side just because it holds it just a little bit better. It does involve more work on your part, but at least the end result is he holds it a lot better. You can put it also on this side too, but the grip seems a little bit bigger. The other thing he comes included with, and probably the more go-to thing, he comes included Rev with his chainsaw. I don't think chainsaws actually make Rev sound. It's kind of like a... Anyways. He does come included with a rather dirty looking chainsaw, and like the hammer/mallet, it looks like it has been used. The teeth of the chainsaw, as you can see, has been soaked in blood. While the blood has now dried, we at least know you could probably find someone's DNA somewhere on the teeth of the chainsaw, probably several teens' DNA. And it's a nicely, like I said, it's a really nicely painted chainsaw. It's even got like little scratches and stuff onto the side. So it looks like a chainsaw he's had in his possession and used rather frequently. This fits into his hand. I guess for that, we're going to have to take, first of all, the hammer out of his hand. There we go, calling it now a hammer. And the interesting thing about these MDS figures is the way they make the articulation on the arms. We won't get right into it right away, but he does have hinge joints on his shoulders, so you can bring like the arms out. But like when it comes to these arms, you can either have them straight, or you can curve the arm inward, and that actually just is a swivel joint. So if you want to have more of the arms straight, you simply just keep it the way we have it right now. If you want to have the arms turning, though, inward, you just take the arm and swivel it in. That's it. And then, of course, you're just going to want to correct the hands and do the exact same thing on the other side. You sort of already see he's got a proper pose for holding the chainsaw. And then just go ahead and take the hammer of the chainsaw. The plastic, actually, one thing I want to comment too is that the plastic that they use for the hands is super soft. So it makes things very, very easy for Leatherface here to be holding the chainsaw, taking the chainsaw out, putting it back into his hand. But I'm sure once you've got the chainsaw in his hand, this is the way you're permanently going to have the figure displayed. It does, granted, add a little bit more front heaviness to the figure, but at least you can compensate by having the ball joints there in his ankles. Again, more on the articulation on the figure in a second. And actually, too, being the way the hands are posed, you can actually just bring the hand out, or bring it up at least, if you want to have it a little bit more closer to his head. You can't quite have it waving over his head just because he's got so large of a noggin anyways, but at least that's one great way of displaying the figure. Let's go ahead now just for now at least, we're going to take this out. We're going to come back to the chainsaw, believe you me, in a moment. Getting a closer look now at MDS Leatherface's face. For a stylized rendition of Leatherface, I think they've certainly checked all the boxes rather nicely. He even has like the flaps of his ears, the parts of the skin mask that go over top of actually his existing ears. This one ear's a little harder to see. This one ear's a little easier to whisper secrets into. You're eating people. Oh, I guess he doesn't care. The skin mask looks nice, though. It does have the stitches all around the side here. It's even got like a little lace down below there where he's tied off the excess. He's got the little strings there on the front of his mouth. Also the cutout sections of the eyes. I really like the way they've darkened the eyes too. And the way they've used these types of eyes, it really adds a lot of personality and life to the figure's face. I mean, just the way that the studio lights are bouncing off the lights, off the bulbs, off the eyeballs of Leatherface. It really does give a lot of personality to the actual character. Sculpting the hair is actually pretty good too. It looks as if they've actually added 2 colors of brown in here. It's kind of really more of a dark black than anything else, but I don't know if it's maybe just more my eyes than anything else. It actually kind of looks like there's a little bit of a lighter coloring of that same shade, or 1 shade lighter, added in there as well. I really like the sculpting of the face. Now, this is based on the original Leatherface look. I wonder if we are going to be getting ourselves like the pretty lady-looking Leatherface, sort of in this same styling. They would have to, of course, just change at the head. We don't obviously have this outfit either. Leatherface, I'm just going to move his arms out of the way here, does have the apron. Advertised online, the read-up for the MDS Leatherface actually says cloth apron. I wonder at one point if Mezco decided that they were going to use a cloth cape and then just realized that a rubber cape was much better. Actually, rubber works a lot better in this case. I mean, you're not getting a superposable figure anyways. You really don't need to have an actual draping fabric, an apron. I think like plastic like this, or the rubbery plastic that they've used, definitely does the job a lot better. It works to also help show the wrinkles a lot nicer, and it's a better way to paint this too, because if it was cloth, it would just seep and soak the red in. This actually is rather nice, just the way they've got it settled on the surface here of this rubbery plastic. He does have his tie, of course, that sticks out from the top of it. There really isn't enough clearance that you could tuck the tie inside there. And Leatherface has quite a stained looking striped shirt. Again, all the things you would expect Leatherface to have, right down to his cowboy boots, have captured here nicely in the MDS release. He does have a more squatting pose. I'm just going to put him down here so you can get a better look at what I'm talking about here. He's permanently squatting down. Most of the MDS figures, all of the MDS figures we've looked at lately, well, in the last several years here on this channel, have all had sort of pre-posed look to them. And Leatherface here is no exception. I don't mind actually the way they put him in a pose like this. I mean, again, it's quite suitable for him holding the chainsaw, or again, if you want to have him displayed with the mallet, either or. Really, really nice the way they pose this guy. Let's have a look at the articulation here on MDS Leatherface. Not only is it a nicely detailed figure, but quite posable too. His head is on a ball joint, so already you can rotate the head all the way around. Just be careful of these little pieces. Although they are softer plastic, they are of course going to get caught against the shoulders when you're rotating the arm around, or the head all the way around. The head looks up better than it does down. I mean, when you try to move the head down, that's as far down as it actually will go. But the head does actually look up rather nicely, and you can also rock it back and forth too. Shoulders are on a full hinge joint, so they can rotate all the way around. I would imagine it's probably a ball joint on the inside socket of the shoulder. That rotates the arm, like I said, all the way around. You can do the exact same thing on the other side too. I guess technically you could have one of the arms, kind of just bring his head slightly out of the way and have one of his arms up with the chainsaw in his hand. Yeah, that's probably something you could also do as well. Just take the chainsaw, abruptly stopping what we were talking about with the articulation here on the figure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could bring it up. Although, like, it sits a little loose, just the way his wrist is. I don't know if he would be able to permanently hold the chainsaw in his hand. And yeah, probably this is the better hand anyways. It's got a bigger grip, just attaching it into his hand. Yeah, I guess you could have it slightly brought up. You just wouldn't be able to have him with both hands holding onto the chainsaw. That kind of thing just ain't possible. We've already looked at the fact that he does have the articulation here on the elbows here. One thing I actually didn't even mention, the fact that he does have the stains here. The blood sort of has trickled down the arm. The goal of a successful sandwich that has like the oil and all the dressing on it is it has to run down to your elbow. That's what Julia Child taught me. It probably would be the word work as well also with human blood. The arms rotate, yes, so they swivel. So you can either have the arms bent this way, or if you want to have the arms straight, you just literally just straightening out, swiveling the hand around, and then just going to bring the arm this way if you want to have it straight instead. For how simple really that articulation point is, it's effective that it not only can do a bend, but also can curve in or have an elbow bend without having to put a joint right there. Hands, of course, rotate all the way around. I did notice like the hands are a little loose, more on this one than this one here. They really they don't rattle necessarily, but I mean, like, I can flick this back and forth. That's how loose his wrists are. I mean, really, for me, only to hold the chainsaw anyways in his hands. That's not really going to be a deal breaker anyways, but I just noticed, like, him holding maybe the mallet in this hand, it's going to be a little bit more looser, at least on mine. Now, the figure underneath his apron here does actually have a ball joint, so you can hinge that back and forth, and you can kind of rotate it also as well. He has no leg articulation. That's all permanently molded like this, but he does have at least boot articulation. Those aren't his elbows, mister. Boot articulation, which are also on ball joints. So if you find, for example, like Leatherface has any bit of difficult time standing, pretty much just like put the figure down and just balance and just move his feet until you've got the right footing. And of course, the last thing we really want to do is, of course, get back the chainsaw. How iconic would it be for Leatherface to have a chainsaw in his hand? I mean, just to leave it out. Yeah, granted, they do give you the mallet. I'm going to still continue to call it a mallet. But for me, when it comes to displaying this figure, oh yeah. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. I'm definitely going to be displaying MDS Leatherface here with the chainsaw. It just feels right. And when it feels right, you got to run with it. Whether they are going to be running any further with any MDS other Leatherfaces, like, for example, the Pretty Lady, time will certainly tell. But I do like the classic look of Leatherface, slightly smaller, slightly squatter, and slightly more stylized. The MDS Leatherface, or actually just MDS figures across the board, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. If you like the smaller, squatter proportions of these horror slashers, MDS really is the best way to go. This figure, by the way, is around a $45 price point figure. I mean, keeping in mind how much plastic that they utilized to this figure, and really for the fact that it's not just a staction figure. There is actually working, serviceable posability going in both his shoulders, his elbows, and his wrists. The head is a little bit more limited just by the nature of how big that noggin actually is, but at least the figure does actually have posability in his ankles. So if you do have some problems stabilizing the figure, especially if he's chasing some teenager with a chainsaw in his hands, at least he does have the ball joints in his ankles to compensate the figure and prevent it from falling over. Yes, indeed, I certainly do like the look here of MDS Leatherface. Whether we are going to be getting any more Leatherfaces down the pipeline from Mezco will certainly be up in the open. I don't even know. I don't work for Mezco, but I can only hope that we are going to be getting more Leatherface figures. We did also have that larger scale Leatherface. I didn't want to bring in for the review simply just because it's two completely different sized figures. I probably now in retrospect probably should have brought back in one of the other MDS figures we've looked at, but there has been, I think I've covered off all of them here on this channel. If you certainly did want to check them out, at the very end of this video popping up will be a playlist for Mezco, and that will cover off not only the Living Dead dolls, the MDS line, all the stuff in between that Mezco have been churning out. If you're a big fan of horror, Mezco's really got a lot of stuff covered, at least when it comes to characters like Leatherface, characters like Chucky, and all the characters in between. What do you guys think, though, of MDS Leatherface? Pretty fun-looking figure, isn't it? Again, I did pick this one up over on Entertainment Earth's website, to which, if you guys, again, are interested to pick this one up for yourself, a little over $40 will set you back here on MDS Leatherface, but I'll provide the link down below in the video description. Hey now, are you new here? I'm not saying that with this chainsaw in my hand. I'm actually just putting the chainsaw behind my back right now. Are you new here? If you are, and you're enjoying the content that you've been seeing as of late, and you haven't already done so, don't let the revving chainsaw persuade you. But make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. That's a horrible chainsaw. Make sure as well you're turning on the bell notification, and make sure you're coming back, because while we have wrapped up the review for the MDS Leatherface, there's definitely going to be more videos coming your way in the not-so-distant future. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.